couldn't believe it. Piddy, the Piddy everyone adored, the one with the flawless smile and undeniable charm, had asked me to spend the night with him. Not at some glitzy hotel, but at his secret mansion, hidden away from the world. My heart raced with excitement. I was just a normal girl, and yet here I was, chosen by a celebrity like him. It felt like I was living in a dream. As we arrived, the place looked grand, yet isolated, like it had been forgotten by time. But I didn't mind. Piddy was next to me, and that was all I cared about. Piddy led me straight to his bedroom. He grabbed a bottle of baby oil, pouring far too much into his hands, rubbing it across his skin in a way that seemed meant to be seductive. It felt strange, or maybe that was just his style. I tried to brush off the unease. This was supposed to be a special night after all. We had an intense night together. And afterward, we talked. Something in our conversation shifted my view of him. He told me he loved me, but then handed me a pill and casually suggested I take it to avoid pregnancy. It felt oddly transactional, cold. Soon after, he drifted off to sleep. Piddy seemed distant, not the warm and charming man I thought I knew. Maybe he was just tired. I lay beside him, trying to calm my nerves. Then I heard it. A soft whisper cut through the silence. I froze, straining to listen. It wasn't Piddy, he was fast asleep beside me. Slowly, I sat up. Then I saw her. She was standing right next to Piddy, her hair hanging in front of her face, and her figure gaunt, covered in bruises. Her hands, they had marks, dark, finger-like bruises around her wrists, and her eyes, wild, haunting, full of something I couldn't quite understand. Who was she? A fan? A stalker? Why was she here? And why was Piddy just lying there oblivious? I felt a wave of jealousy, anger even. This woman, standing so close to him, made my skin crawl. I whispered, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing here?" The woman didn't respond. She just turned, her eyes hollow, and began walking away, her footsteps silent as though she floated rather than walked. Something about her was horribly wrong. My stomach churned, but I had to know. I followed her. She led me through the hallways. She seemed to belong here, like she'd walked these halls countless times before. I called out again, but she never looked back, never acknowledged me. Finally, we reached a hidden door, one I hadn't noticed before. The air grew colder with each step. I hesitated at the threshold, but I couldn't stop myself. When I entered the room, I gasped. There in the dim light were people, so many of them. Men, women, even teenagers, all bound, beaten, bruised. Their eyes were sunken, skin pale, and their bodies were covered in cuts and burns. Some were barely conscious, others seemed already gone. The sight was horrific. It didn't make sense. Why were they here? What was happening? One of the girls, a young teenager, lifted her head weakly and met my eyes.
He did this to us. He tricked us.
He promised us fame.
Another voice croaked.
He lured us here. Then he turned on us. This is what he does. He uses us, breaks us.
I stumbled back, trying to process what I was hearing. Piddy, my Piddy. This couldn't be real. But the blood, the bruises, it was right in front of me. I needed proof. I fumbled for my phone, trying to steady my hands enough to take a photo. I snapped a picture, then another. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. My breath caught in my throat, and slowly, I turned. Piddy stood there watching me. His face was calm, devoid of emotion. He didn't look surprised, nor angry, just indifferent.
What are you doing, Ailey?
My voice cracked. What is this, Piddy? What the hell is this? He took a step closer, his eyes dark and unreadable.
They did it to themselves, you know. Moths to a flame. They wanted to be near the light, but the light burns. It's not my fault.
I stepped back, horrified. You did this to them?
They wanted fame.
he interrupted, his tone chilling.
I gave them what they asked for. If they couldn't handle it, that's on them. And you're just another one of them.
The words cut through me like a knife. I looked around, the faces of the people I'd just spoken to now lying lifeless, crumpled on the floor like discarded dolls. They weren't alive. I stumbled back. The woman I had followed, she was one of them. A ghost, just like the rest. Piddy had killed them. He had killed them all. I backed toward the door, but Piddy stepped closer, his smile icy.
You can't leave, Ailey. You're part of this now.
But then, the spirits, the people Piddy had harmed, began to rise. Their ghostly figures surrounded Piddy, their faces filled with anger and vengeance. They weren't going to let him hurt me.
Run! Run now!
Without thinking, I turned and bolted up the stairs. I couldn't stop. Behind me, I could hear Piddy yelling, his voice twisted with fury. The ghosts were holding him back, but I didn't know for how long. I burst out of the mansion and ran to my car. When the engine roared to life, I sped away, the mansion disappearing behind me. I couldn't let anyone else fall into his trap. I had to go to the police. I had to make sure this nightmare ended.
I had been mindlessly scrolling through my phone, watching random videos, when an ad popped up. Detect ghosts within 2 meters. It blared in bold letters, followed by eerie music. It looked ridiculous, probably just another gimmick. But I love horror. I was genuinely curious to see how detecting a nearby ghost would scare me. I downloaded the app. As the screen loaded, the app explained how it worked. Something about EMF readings and special sensors. I wasn't paying attention. I was just ready to laugh at how fake it would be. The app booted up and a radar-like interface appeared on my phone. I rolled my eyes. Yeah, sure, I muttered. For a minute, nothing happened. The screen stayed blank as I pointed it around the living room. I was about to delete it when the phone vibrated in my hand. Ghost detected. I froze. The words blinked at me, the phone emitting a soft beep. Okay, that's creepy, I thought, but it was just a coincidence. Then I heard it. A faint clatter, the unmistakable sound of a dish hitting the floor in the kitchen. My skin prickled, the hairs on my neck standing on end. Slowly, I clutched my phone and made my way to the kitchen. It was probably just the wind or a breeze from an open window, nothing more. But when I stepped into the room, everything was in place, except for a shattered bowl on the floor. No big deal. It must have been too close to the edge, I told myself. I knelt down to pick up the pieces, muttering under my breath about clumsy accidents, but something felt off. The windows were closed, and there wasn't a breeze. Just as I was gathering the shards, I noticed movement. Something small, pale, and thin. My heart stopped. Right there, just inches from my hand, a long, bony hand was gathering grains of rice from the shattered bowl. The hand was skeletal, fingers impossibly long, the nails cracked and yellowed. I held my breath as the hand slowly, deliberately pulled back into the shadows under the kitchen counter. My eyes followed it, and there, in the corner by the refrigerator, something was crouched in the darkness. It was hunched, its body grotesquely thin, limbs too long for its frame. Its face, pale and gaunt, with hollow, sunken eyes, turned toward me, and in its hand, it was holding a single grain of rice, which it slowly, disgustingly brought to its mouth and ate. I stood paralyzed, my legs trembling. The thing's eyes, dead, hollow pits, locked onto mine. It reached out again, its arms impossibly long, fingers stretching toward the shattered remains of the bowl, plucking at the rice like a starving animal. I bolted. Without thinking, I ran out of the kitchen, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. My mind raced. It wasn't real. It couldn't be. I had probably imagined it. After all, I had just watched a horror movie. Yeah, that had to be it. But then my phone buzzed again. Ghost detected. The message made my blood run cold. No, not again. I was still standing in the hallway, catching my breath, when I heard the faint creak of a cabinet door. Slowly, I peeked into the living room. My TV drawer door was wide open. I hadn't touched it. I stepped closer, the tension building in my chest. That's when I noticed the drawer under the TV, shaking violently as if something inside was trying to break free. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, and stepped closer. The rattling grew more frantic, the drawer slamming against the cabinet as though it were possessed. My hand hovered over the handle, trembling as I debated whether or not to open it. Before I could make a decision, the drawer burst open with a loud bang and something came crawling out. I stumbled back, my legs barely holding me up. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be real. Human heads, disembodied, their eyes wide open and mouths agape, were spilling out of the drawer, rolling across the floor. But they didn't stop at the floor. No, they lifted, hovering in the air like grotesque balloons, their eyes fixed on me as they floated toward the ceiling. I backed into the wall, my heart hammering in my chest. One of the heads twitched, its mouth stretching into a ghastly grin. My breath caught in my throat as I scrambled to get to my bedroom in my panic. The heads floated closer, circling above me like vultures waiting for me to drop. I could hear the faint, garbled whispers escaping their lips, but I couldn't understand a word. All I knew was that I had to get out of there. I slammed the door shut, gasping for breath. I heard nothing more and breathed a sigh of relief. My phone buzzed again, many times, its vibration pulling my attention back to the screen. I hesitated for a second before glancing down. Ghost detected. The words sent a chill down my spine. I decided to delete the app. It seemed like I had been on my phone for too long, and my mind was no longer clear. I should get some sleep.
Trick or treat.
I've always hated Halloween. The costumes, the candy, the fake smiles plastered on every kid's face. It all seemed so pointless. Every year they came knocking, disturbing the peace, asking for candy I didn't have. This year was no different, or so I thought. The doorbell rang again. I sighed, forcing myself up from the couch. Another one, I muttered under my breath. I opened the door, expecting to see the usual neighborhood kids, but this time, something was off. Standing on my doorstep was a figure, tall and skinny, draped in a strange costume that hid its face entirely. I couldn't even tell if it was a kid or someone playing a prank. The figure's voice was low, almost hollow, as it said,
"Trick or treat."
I frowned, more annoyed than anything. My hands reached into my pockets out of habit, but as expected, I had nothing to offer. "Sorry, kid," I grumbled. "I don't do Halloween." But instead of leaving, the figure just stood there, completely still. Then, after an uncomfortable pause, it slowly extended its hand, offering me a small black bag of candy.
"Happy Halloween."
It whispered, voice barely audible. before turning and walking away into the darkness. I stared after it, uneasy but shrugged it off. Weird kids, weird costumes. It's Halloween, after all. I tossed the bag of candy on the table and sat back down. The house was quiet, but that strange encounter had left me feeling restless. I stared at the candy bag for a while. Eventually, boredom got the best of me. "Why not?" I muttered, grabbing the bag. The candy looked normal enough, wrapped in shiny paper, colourful, harmless. I popped one in my mouth and chewed. It wasn't bad. I grabbed another, then another, and soon enough, I was mindlessly snacking. Then came the pain. It hit suddenly, a sharp, stabbing sensation inside my mouth. I froze, my heart racing as I felt something cold and hard jammed between my teeth. Panic surged through me. I spat the candy out, blood mixing with bits of chocolate. A needle, a long, thin needle, was lodged in the candy. My hands were trembling as I reached into my mouth, feeling with my tongue. My gums were throbbing, and I could feel the needle buried deep. Blood poured out as I tried to pull it free, my fingers slick with it. I stumbled into the bathroom, leaned over the sink, staring into the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes wide with panic. There, in the reflection, I saw it, a needle sticking out from my gums, glistening with blood. I grabbed it, wincing as I tugged it free. The pain was unbearable, but it was out. I dropped the needle into the sink with a metallic clink, and my mind raced. What kind of sick joke was this? I rinsed my mouth with water, but the blood kept coming. My gums throbbed with pain, and I spat again. More blood, more pain. But then, it wasn't just pain anymore. It was itching. I pressed my tongue against my gums, trying to figure out what was happening, but my mouth felt wrong. My gums were swollen, irritated. I leaned closer to the mirror, my heart hammering in my chest. That's when I saw them. White, bulbous bumps were forming along my gum line. They pulsed slightly, stretching the skin until it felt like they were about to burst. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a paper knife from my room. I stared at my reflection again, knife in hand. Slowly shaking, I pressed the blade to my gum. The sharp pain returned, but the itching was unbearable. I dragged the blade across the swollen bumps, slicing them open. Black, oily liquid sprayed out, coating the sink. The stench hit me immediately, a thick, rotting odor that made my stomach churn. It wasn't blood. This was something else, something foul, something alive. I gagged, my vision swimming, but the worst was yet to come. Something moved in my mouth. My gums pulsed again, and I felt something wriggling beneath the skin. I dropped the knife, grabbing a pair of pliers from the drawer. I opened my mouth wide, trying to steady my hands. With the pliers, I yanked at my teeth, one by one, pulling them out. Each pull brought more black liquid, more stench. My teeth clattered into the sink, broken and bloody. But there, in the ruins of my gums, I saw them, black, slimy worms. They wriggled and squirmed, their slick bodies weaving through the open wounds. I screamed, grabbing at them and pulling them out with my hands, but one slipped past my grasp, falling back into my throat. I stumbled back, clutching at my stomach. Something was crawling inside me. Something was eating me from the inside. In my haze of terror, my eyes fell on the knife. My vision blurred, and a dark thought crept into my mind.